So there was this really intense interview recently with FBI Director Patel. It kicks off talking about a single deadly incident, but wow, it quickly blows up into this massive defense of his entire agency. So in this explainer, we're going to break down how this one single conversation really shines a light on the huge divide between political speech and law and order in America right now.
And boom, the interview starts with this. Just an incredibly forceful statement. This one line, it just sets this defiant, absolutely no compromise tone for the entire thing. So you have to ask, right? What on earth prompted a declaration that strong?
Okay, so it all kicks off with a deadly encounter. We're talking Border Patrol agents here. The interviewer, they jump right in, pressing for details. And this puts the director in a really tough spot, He's trying to be transparent, but also has to protect an active investigation.
And this is really the core question, isn't it? This is what's driving the whole first part of the conversation. The interviewer is asking, hey, what exactly happened? How was this person threatening Border Patrol to the point that they had to use lethal force? And Director Patel's answers, well, they tell us a lot about where the investigation is at right now.
So right off the bat, the director makes one thing super clear. The FBI isn't actually the lead investigator here. Nope, that's the Department of Homeland Security. The FBI has a very specific and super crucial job. They're handling the science. They're the ones in the lab analyzing all the physical evidence from the scene. So what's the lab actually looking at? Well, the director confirms they've got a handgun and 2 full magazines from the scene. And the whole goal here is to build a story based purely on science, right? They're hoping the fingerprints, the DNA, the ballistics, all of that will tell them exactly who was holding the weapon and how it was used. And right here, this is where the whole conversation just takes a sharp turn, a total pivot. The interviewer asks, hey, how much of this violence is because of political rhetoric? And Director Patel's answer, it completely shifts the focus from this one specific incident to what he sees as a much, much bigger and more dangerous problem. So to really drive this point home, the interviewer brings up this specific quote from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and it's basically presented as Exhibit A, the prime example of the kind of political speech that the director thinks is putting law enforcement officers directly in harm's way.
And Director Patel's reaction? It's instant. There is zero hesitation. He draws a direct line from the governor's words to violence against law enforcement. He even calls the rhetoric disgusting and revolting. In his mind, it's a straight line from that kind of speech to actual physical violence.
So, okay, where's the line then? According to the director, it's actually pretty simple. Peaceful protest, that's your First Amendment right, absolutely. But he argues that right just stops the second a weapon shows up or the moment a protest turns violent. For him, that's the trigger. That's when law enforcement has to step in. And all this criticism seems to flip a switch. The director pivots again, but this time he launches into this huge defense of his agency's performance under the Trump administration. And he does it by just rattling off this rapid-fire list of stats to basically paint a picture of what he calls a historic year of success.
He kicks it off with a huge number, a 200% increase in FBI arrests. That's 67,000 arrests just this year. I mean, that's a massive headline figure, and it's clearly designed to show this dramatic surge in activity and, effectiveness.
And he doesn't stop there. He drills right down into the data. He says that out of all those arrests, 37,000 were of violent offenders. And get this, he says that's a 100% increase from the year before. So he's using this to argue, look, we're specifically going after the most dangerous criminals out there.
And the stats just keep on coming. He's citing these huge increases in fentanyl seizures, then there's thousands of kids rescued, gangs dismantled, more human traffickers arrested. Every single number is there to show this broad, multi-front war on crime. He's building his case, piece by piece, for a massively successful year.
Then he gets even more pointed. He makes a direct comparison about capturing the FBI's top 10 most wanted. He claims that under the Trump administration, his agency caught 6 of them in about a year. And he contrasts that with 4 fugitives caught over the entire 4 years of the Biden administration. Yeah, that's a very clear, very political shot right there.
And this brings us to the final part of the interview, where things get openly partisan. I mean, no holding back. Director Patel just addresses the political conflict head-on. He basically frames all the criticism his agency is getting as nothing more than party politics.
The interviewer brings up these reports about a DOJ investigation into Minnesota Democrats. And Director Patel confirms it. He says, yes, the FBI is involved, and that grand jury subpoenas are going out as part of an investigation into whether they were obstructing ICE operations.
And then he kind of walks through the process, right? The standard procedure for this kind of thing. First, you have to establish probable cause. You have to believe laws were broken. Then you issue subpoenas for records. And finally, you put people in front of a grand jury. That's the group of citizens who decide if there's enough evidence for actual charges. He presents it all as very routine, just a by-the-book investigation.
And this is really his final argument. The interviewer asks him, why don't Democrats agree with you? Why don't they see this as a success? And his response is 100% political. He basically claims their criticism has nothing to do with policy. He says it's just because it's President Trump who's delivering what he calls this historic year for law enforcement.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, this interview really draws a battle line, doesn't it? A line between law enforcement on one side and political protest on the other. It presents this really stark choice, and it's all seen through a super partisan lens. And it leaves us with this big fundamental question. In a country as divided as this one, who actually gets to decide where a protected right ends and a crime begins?